Tubman spent a lot of time in the Beaufort area. She walked these very streets. Matter of fact, the bakery that she operated out of, a lot of people say it's the building right next door. She spent about 3 years in Beaufort serving as a spy, but one of her most daring feat was the raid up the Combahee River and on June 2nd, 1863, where they went from Beaufort on up the Combahee River up to the point where the bridge is now on Highway 17. And there they went up that causeway onto many of the plantations on the Colleton County side. And over 700 slaves were freed. A daring move. They came back. Harriet Tubman actually led that raid. And they came back and they brought the newly freed slaves and deposited them in a church in Beaufort. And then afterwards they dispersed into the community, and some of the men went into the military. As you know, the new bridge that's being built at Combahee River will be named the Harriet Tubman Bridge. This year, after I was elected to the House, I had the opportunity of introducing that piece of legislation. Actually, I did it on my 10th day in session, and it was passed on the 17th of February. That's about my 17th day in the session. The bill was passed. We're proud of that.
Moving a shaker.
I think that Harriet Tubman story is one that has not been told. We're hoping that as a result of the attention that's being focused on Harriet Tubman, that it will stimulate a lot more research on her. Some scholars come into the area and do some substantive research. We're glad to have with us today Mr. Asa Gordon. He's done a great deal of work on the study of Harriet Tubman. He's made a presentation in this community about a decade ago. I was fascinated by it, and we're certainly glad to have him back with us today. And he's going to take the time to make a presentation. Afterwards, we will travel to the bridge site. The bridge is already under construction. It should be completed next year. And what we're doing now is to generate some awareness so that when it's time to dedicate it, the whole community can embrace it and celebrate it. We're certainly glad to have Asa here. We'll do another presentation later this evening in Colleton County. Thank you. I'll admit that she may not have been involved.
Now, here's my most prized record. This is the smoking gun record that established that she was a spy. This is from the Department of the South, headquarters in the field of Farley Island on January the 7th, 1863. And this is the Provost Marshal. The Major General Commanding directs that you pay the bearer, Mrs. Harriet Tubman Colored, $100 Secret Service money. Taking receipt for same. And here you can find it. This is where the record is. In Department of the South, letters transmitted, entry 4088, volume 13, file 1566, part 1 of the Regimental General T 393.
Mr. Gordon, how recently was it that you discovered this document?
About 4 months ago.
About 4 months ago.
That's a lot of research.
And
New developments with the bridge?
No, they had a couple of change orders, but nothing made. No. Where are you from? If it is completed in May, we have projected on course the date of the dedication for June 2nd. That would be the actual anniversary of the bridge. It took place on June 2nd in 1863. So if it is completed in early spring, that would be the dedication of June 2nd. That's the date that we already presented.
And okay, you would reporting that contact me.
Right before, yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't get to the time.
Okay.
He has a theory on
Yeah. One thing is let's understand that lost cause history is not interested. lost cause history, the history of the Confederate Civil War. We're not interested in these type of stories. These stories, like I said, liberating themselves and participating in the armies. But the thing about one thing is they did not know she was involved in something like the Charleston period. But what was interesting, it was the Northern papers, the Boston and the Garden, that actually specified Harriet Tubman so-called race. Also, the guy who commanded over the race, James Montgomery, in his report, spoke glowingly of her role in contribution in leading his raid. Because she was able to tell them where the torpedoes were. The other thing was that the Mercury, though, what it did what the Northern papers weren't interested in, just saying that she made it northern plantations. But the Southern papers, they were interested in the plantations. And so they gave a list of the plantations. But they do talk about that they were U.S. colored troops. As a matter of fact, the guy, the Southern commander, who was over this region, he lost his command when they found out that he had been surprised by a raid of U.S. colored troops. Now, you can find that kind of information in the official records of the rebellion. There's a whole series of records there for the country, but most of the records there are Confederate records. And but the Mercury does mention the fact of the plantation. It names the plantations that were raided, and it mentions the fact that free slaves escaped from one of the plantations before, of the Blake plantation, the Hayward plantation, and they believe that's what the Charleston was, that they were the ones to point it out, to the Yankees and raid where the torpedoes were raided. But actually, they were the scouts. I found later records that indicated that they were among the scouts that Harriet Tubman had recruited for a spy. And the intelligence officers today would refer to the operation she led as what they call a special ops. So she was a special ops operator during that time.
Alan said if you need anything about the bridge. Rev. Take care. With us, Representative Robert Brown. He's served with us, part of the Colleton County delegation as well. We're glad to have with us today Mr. Asa Gordon. He is with the Douglas Institute think tank in Washington. He's done extensive research on Harriet Tubman and a lot of research on the Civil War period, mainly on soldiers and veterans. He gave a presentation in the Low Country a little over a decade ago, and it was on Harriet Tubman. He had done research for a number of years even prior to that. I was fascinated by his presentation. We indicated to him that whenever he was back in the area, we would love for him to come and share with the Beaufort as well as the Carlton County audience. He called me and said that he was going to be in Savannah and call again on Sunday. And I said, well, we'll set up for Tuesday, 2 presentations. He was with us earlier today. I did a great presentation, and you're going to enjoy his presentation now. We have some, Jeff Griggs has done a lot of studies in this area. He's a jewel as well as a resource person, so we're glad to have Jeff with us here, a good friend of mine. Most of you know Ms. Harris from the delegation office. He's going to formally introduce himself and tell you exactly what he's involved with as he goes into his introduction. One of the reasons why we wanted to bring him to this area is to also generate the awareness about Harriet Tubman. A lot of people are not familiar with her involvement in South Carolina, the fact that she spent nearly 3 years as a spy in this area, and also was intricately involved with the Combahee raid. A lot of people are not aware of that, as we know that the new bridge, the Combahee River Bridge, has been named the Harriet Tubman Bridge. The bridge is under construction, and it is scheduled to be completed in 2008. They may be running a little ahead of schedule. They're not going to say that, but that's the indication that they're running a little ahead of schedule. So we are preparing now to begin to generate some interest so that we can begin to focus on the dedication as well and be ready for that. Let me present to you Mr. Asa Gordon. In his own way, he will introduce himself.
Well, it's Gordon. I'm executive director of something called the Douglas Institute of Government. That's the education think tank in Washington, D.C. And the acronym tells how old I am. The acronyms are big. Okay. And I'm also serve as capacity of something called the Secretary General of the Sons and Daughters of the United States Colored Troops. And that, in that capacity, I guess, liaison with the African American Civil War Memorial. And the African American Civil War Memorial this is the memorial in Washington, D.C. that was designed by Ed Hamilton. Around the memorial is at 10th and U in the Shaw era, named after Colonel Shaw of the 54th Massachusetts, related to 54th Massachusetts. And the Wall of Honor lists the name of over 209,145,000 U.S. colored troops who served in the Union Army during the Civil War. And my capacity is a liaison office to establish state chapters to celebrate the local legacy of the United States colored troops. So I have state chapters in South Carolina, Georgia, Louisiana, and none in Savannah, is that, in Mississippi. Harriet Tubman, Colonel Montgomery and his gallant band of 300 black soldiers, under the guidance of a black woman, dashed into the enemy's country, struck a bold and effective blow, destroying millions of dollars worth of commissary stores and cotton and lordly dwellings, and striking terror to the heart of rebellion. Now you notice in lordly dwelling, they didn't care about the name of these plantations, but that was something I was interested in because I wanted to know what kind of slaves may to trace down their ancestry. Brought out near 800 slaves and thousands of dollars worth of property without losing a man or receiving a scratch. It was a glorious consummation. After they were all fairly disposed in the Beaufort church, they were addressed in strains of thrilling elegance by their gallant deliverer to which responded the song, "There is a white room for thee," a song to appropriate. And they talk about the colored. This colonel was followed by a speech from the black woman who laid the raid, and under whose inspiration it was originated and conducted. For sound sense and native elegance, her address would do honor to any man, and it created a great sensation. It is, from what we can determine, given at that time, is the Reverend, yeah, would you address that? Go ahead.
It tells that after the raid, the newly freed slaves were deposited in a Beaufort church. We believe that that church is the Tabernacle Baptist Church that I pastor. That was the only church in operation at that time. It was founded as the first African American church in the same year, 1863. So they were in existence at that time. There were several other predominantly white churches but we know that they were used as hospitals during the war. So it may be that that church that the newly freed slaves went to first after the Combahee raid was at the Tabernacle Baptist Church.
That was one of my questions.
Harriet Tubman, Albany, New York, August the 28th, 1868. Dear Harriet, the differences between us is very marked. Most that I have done and suffered in the service of our cause has been in the public, and I have received much encouragement every step of the way. On the other hand, you have labored in a private way. I have walked in the day, you in the night. I have enjoyed the applause of the crowds and the satisfaction that comes with the approval of the multitude, while the most that you have done has been witnessed by a few trembling, scared, foot-sole bondsmen and women, who you have delivered out of the house of bondage, and whose heartfelt "God bless you" was your only reward. The midnight sky and silent stars are witness to your devotion to freedom. Your obedient servant, Frederick Douglass. I thought that was very telling that Frederick Douglass, that was a legend of his time, was pointing out, I talk the talk, but you walk the walk. Yeah. I don't think I can improve on Frederick Douglass' comment, so I will close then. Thank you very much.
Thank you.